Hi, welcome to week 5 of your Medical Language 1 course. This week we're going to be covering 2 chapters. The first chapter that we're going to be covering is Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is all about the nervous system, and the nervous system is probably one of the most important systems in our bodies because not only is it the most complex, but it also basically runs everything else. So it controls all parts of all of the other systems. So it's very, very important that we understand how the nervous system works. It consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and all of the nerves. So all of those things together are part of the nervous system. Here's just a little visual for you. The brain and the spinal cord are considered the central nervous system. And then the peripheral nerves and the sensory receptors are part of the peripheral nervous system. So if you see CNS and PNS, excuse me, that's how they're broken down. So central nervous system's the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is all of those other nerves and the sensory receptors. We have the parasympathetic nerves that control all of those involuntary functions. So think of it, for example, you don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think to make sure that your heart beats every day. Those are all things that are part of the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, and then of course we have those other parts of the system that we do have to think about. Reaching out and picking something up, things like that. So this chapter gets into some detail about all of those parts of the brain and the central nervous system, as you know, and all of the different things that go along with it. The things that they control, like what nerve controls your sense of smell, the olfactory nerve, what controls your sense of sight, the optic nerve. All of those things are talked about in this particular chapter. So what we really, again, like always, what we really want to focus on is some of the terminology as it relates to conditions. So some of the conditions that you'll see talked about in this chapter are Alzheimer's, aneurysms, cephalgia, which is just a headache, cerebral concussion, cerebral palsy. So lots of different conditions that you're probably familiar with, but maybe you didn't necessarily associate them with the nervous system. Also want to make sure that you're familiar with the different abbreviations. So these are just a few of them. ADHD is probably one that most of us are familiar with. And then again, we want to go in and look at the different drugs used to treat some of these disorders. So we're going to have everything from pain relievers to things that are used for anxiety, depression, psychoses, insomnia, all of those types of things. So all of those things are going to be covered in this chapter as well. Then the second chapter we're going to be looking at is the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system is all of those glands that secrete hormones, and they control how different body organs work. So we're going to be looking at things like the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the pancreas, the testes and ovaries. Those are all considered parts of the endocrine system. And obviously they all have much different, functions that are a lot different from one another. They give you some of the locations of the endocrine, the organs of the endocrine system on this particular slide. So you notice that they're all over your body, and they control a lot of different things. Again, what we really want to focus on after you learn about the different pieces and parts is what types of conditions that these control or cause. So things like diabetes. Diabetes is something that happens because of something that's going on in the pancreas. So we want to make sure we understand that one. Things like a goiter. A goiter has to do with the thyroid gland. Let's see. What are some other ones? Hyperkalemia, which is potassium. If you don't have the right level of potassium, that can affect a lot of different things, especially your heart function. So again, focusing on those pathological conditions, and then looking at some of those drugs that are used to treat some of those disorders. So obviously, if we're talking about the pancreas, we're going to be looking at things like insulin. Any of those types of things are going to fall into this particular chapter. If at any point in this week you have any problems or questions with these two chapters, please make sure you reach out to me. Give me a call, send me an email, or a text message. My number is 618-792-2293. Have a great week.